All right. Hello, everybody. This is Darren. Things are a little bit awkward, but that's all right. We will make it work, won't we? Anyway, yeah. Yeah, so welcome to Mondays with Matthew on a Wednesday for a couple more weeks, but that's all right. We are looking at the Beatitudes today, Matthew 5, 1 through 12. Lectionary text for the Gospels, Year A, this coming Sunday. I don't remember which week in Epiphany it is, but it's coming right. It's happening. So yeah, let's look at the text real quick, and then we'll see who joins us, and we'll have a little conversation. Should be good. If you are joining us watching this, go ahead and leave a question or a comment if you want to, and we'll try to answer that as best we can. If you leave one later on, we can follow up with that. But here we go. Let's find. So Matthew 5, 1 to 12, these are the Beatitudes, as they're most often known as. So when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. He began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." All right. Yep. All right. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Darren. Good evening.
How are you doing?
Oh, hanging in there. What's going on?
Oh, not really sure.
I
I woke up about 4 this morning, couldn't get back to sleep really. So I'm kind of present and accounted for. I don't know what I got in the tank.
That happens to me more than what you might think, and I just go ahead and try to function through the day.
Right. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. Yeah. But anyway, good. Interesting. This these Beatitudes, or this bit of the text, has always been kind of interesting. Just the way different people understand it, how they try to deal with it. So
yeah, it is, and and I hope I'm not being repetitive. I think I've said this before, but I think the more and more I read, and especially reading books like Carter, and I'm reading another one of his books too, besides his commentary. The more and more I think I realize how prevalent this theme of empire is, and I'm gonna make this statement. And when I was in high school, that's when I first got exposed to. I learned Latin and Greek, and then and I will say that my teacher was excellent, but I think he wrote, and also in college too, they romanticized Rome, and I guess the more and more I read, the more I realize how brutal Rome is, and I think that we have to really have that framework of brutality to really, I won't say understand, but I think that framework is really critical in understanding, especially the Gospels. It's causing me to rethink some things, that some of my own personal theology, like about sin and everything, in light of that framework.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that's right. And yeah, and I think it's and yeah, we kind of say the same thing every week.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do? I mean, it's kind
Yeah.
of where it's kind of that it's all over the place. But
Yeah.
again, for us as hearers and listeners and those who seek to follow what's being said, that understanding of the text, that understanding of the context of the text,
It's critical.
yeah,
And I
it's
think
critical, but it's
because
also hard for us,
it's
because
hard because whereas I think you and I talked that we do live in a version of empire, it's nowhere near to the same degree as what these folks were being exposed to, the brutality these folks were being exposed to.
Well, perhaps it depends on where you are. I mean,
okay, yeah,
if
yeah,
you're an Iraqi reading it, if you're a Afghani reading it, if you're
yeah,
certain parts of certain parts maybe of the United States,
yeah. Or if we were
yeah.
living, 300 or 400 years ago, and we were both people of African descent, yeah, that empire really,
Right.
that would be a real reality.
Yeah. 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 Well, and it's interesting because and I think this is the difficulty too, is that I'm as guilty of this as anyone, is that we are almost completely sheltered from a reading of this text from the point of view of the people who do understand
Exactly.
Exactly. What the empire we live under actually is like.
Yeah.
We don't, that's not on the news. That's not, that is hidden from us. We make
Yeah.
sure that all of that gets, deported deported somewhere else. We don't see that. We don't know what 60 years of embargo does to Cuba. We don't know what we don't see that. We don't know what the constant destabilization of Haiti means for the people of
Right.
the people of
Right.
Haiti.
Right.
But in
We
the end,
live in the first world. We have a
right,
first world mentality.
right,
Now, I would submit that, and I think that email I sent you that,
yeah,
you know, this context we live in of this violence, whether the violence be, what happened in Los Angeles, or
right,
what's happening in Richmond every day,
right,
or what happened in Newport News, or the violence that, and I think I sent this in the email, that the violence that sometimes is perpetuated in our houses of worship, in terms of how
right.
we treat each other, and,
Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
and even the structures, or even policy that implies violence. But
Right.
the context is a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just watching something from the Davos forum, right, which is like where all
Wow.
the rich
Okay.
people get together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
solve the world's problems, and
Yeah.
the Secretary General or whatever of NATO, is there saying that in Ukraine, weapons are the way to peace.
Right.
That's his line.
Yeah.
Weapons are the way to peace. How much? That's just patently false.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but it's a it probably won't be challenged, in our media or in our
Yeah.
environments. It'll
And,
just be,
the issue is, as we look at this text, when Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and we talk about that Greek word, or eirene,
yeah.
when we think of peace as absence of hostility,
Mhm.
and that's not, their that concept of peace. It's more
Right.
or less, it's not somebody's cessation of hostilities, but it's an environment in which everybody can grow to their God-given potential in a community,
Right.
that's delivering that's hopefully delivering equity and positive way of life. So it's not necessarily absence of hostility, but
Yeah.
that's how we see it.
Yeah. And I think, and somewhere,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think I think I have my, I think my Carter book is at the church, but I do think, I think the way he describes peace
Right.
in his text, is that, peace is when, the creation is in tune with the intentions of the creator,
Creator. Right.
that is the, that's what peace actually looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, this question of violence and, how we deal with it and what constitutes violence, I mean, I don't know if you're following what's going on down in Atlanta, where they're constructing this. They call it Cop City. It's basically this huge, training and multiplex thing that they're going to build in this forest area that,
It's in Atlanta, Georgia. You
yeah,
talking about?
Atlanta, Georgia. But so there's been this group of folks who are call themselves forest defenders, who've been in the forest that they're going to, tear down and remove to put this big facility in. And the cops actually shot one of them and killed him. And so there's been kind of protests in the streets, in response to this.
Yeah.
And, so you see where some of the people protesting have targeted Wells Fargo because they're one of the funders behind the police foundation or whatever that's doing this. But of course, what do you hear? You hear about, the violence against the property, but you don't hear about the fact that there's a guy who's dead. I mean, like someone got shot. Someone, like they. I mean, that's not violence. But throwing firecrackers in a Wells Fargo is violence.
Right.
I mean, and I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like, well, and the idea that, of all the stuff that's going on in Atlanta and all the, that the violence that's behind the idea that the solution to any problems that might come up is to build this huge, place where we can train more and more police to go into the communities to, to, I mean, is not necessarily, I mean, that's going to lead to more violence, I mean, that's just, it's just, and it's a violent response to the situation, without considering other peacemaking, in the sense of what we're talking about, other ways to embrace what God might be calling us to in these, in these moments,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I like what Carter says in terms of, what he says in terms of, that God through Jesus is trying to provide healing for the trauma that these folks are dealing with, that his ministry through his healing and through his words and his preaching is to say that, hey, there is another way, that the way to reverse, to deal with this pain is not to take up a sword and go against Rome, but we will live in a reality in which is life affirming, which is about justice, which is about everybody growing in health
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah,
I like what how he says that.
Well, and I think it's important the way he, makes the distinction between the first four Beatitudes and then the second four. That like you're saying, there's Jesus comes and we talked about this last week. There's a proclamation of the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
There's healing that goes on. There's calling together of a community of disciples,
Yeah.
and this is meant to be a way of countering what's going on in the world.
Right.
And it will mean that those of you who are poor and so oppressed that you feel hopeless, I'm reminded of, is it Fannie Lou Hamer, sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? Like
Right. Right.
those people, the poor in spirit, like
Yeah.
the theirs is the kingdom of God.
Yeah. Right.
Those who are mourning
Right.
because the situation that they're in is causing them loss and pain.
Lost. It's God sees them. And that's one of the
right,
things I like about you know um, I listen to a lot of times. I listen to Ebenezer, Dr. Kenny, and then one of the themes of the church says, "Sawabona, we see you. God sees you."
right,
So that the empire doesn't see you, Rome doesn't see you.
right,
Certainly, the high priests and Pharisees, they
right,
don't see you. But I'm here to tell you, deliver that God sees you. God sees your situation.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah. And I
yeah,
like how he says that in when he talks about the tense of the verbs,
right,
that it starts now, but it will continue in the future also. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I always try to talk about and press on people is that, because to me, I hear it in the love chapter, right? Like of Corinthians,
Yeah.
that there are things that endure. There's things that continue on from this world into, from this creation into the new creation, from
Yeah.
this earth into the new earth, and those things, those are the things of the good life, of abundance in this world. They continue on. They are the permanent things,
Yeah.
that go
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess as we look at this and we look at those first 4 verses, and I think this is what I was trying to say in my question is that these folks, these marginalized folks, I don't think a lot of them realize how deeply they were affected or traumatized by the violence of Rome. And I think as we look at this issue of violence in our society,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think oftentimes we really realize how
Right.
how we are affected by the violence, whether it be
Right.
again, the violence we see every day, the shootings, or how sometimes how we even talk to each other, how
Right.
that affects us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes we
Yeah.
need times to sit down and to process,
Yeah.
and sort of kind of cleanse our souls of the effects of this
Right.
violence.
Well, I was watching this couple of videos. Uh, I probably won't be able to lay my hands on them, but they were talking about kind of different responses to gun violence in communities,
Mhm.
and they were saying, that like there is, there's a lot of worth and there's a lot of good in recognizing that, a lot of this violence, a lot of the conflict stems from, you know, a maldistribution of resources by
Right,
by our society. Yes,
right,
there's,
right,
that a redistribution of resources would help the situation. But to what you were saying, one of the things they talk about is how, um, you know, in the Black community in particular, that the history and the trauma related um, to racism and just like anti-Blackness that has
right,
been, kind of absorbed in the community, that many kind of Afrocentric scholars have talked about the way that whereas like depressed white people turn violence in on themselves, and there's suicides and and that sort of thing, that that the internalized kind of anti-blackness and racism works in a way that makes black people going through, like young black people going through the same kind of things that lead white people to kill themselves, externalize that situation onto other black people because of the racism that they've learned, and that part of an intervention strategy for crime, so-called black on black crime, has to include considering the ways that racism has traumatized people into externalizing their pain and their grief and their
it's a deep psychological issue that has to be explored, and that was what makes me so angry when you hear about what DeSantis is talking about in Florida, is that again, unless we can speak truth and verbalize the truth of the reality, there really can't be any healing, because of course we were our ancestors were traumatized, but those who were inflicting the pain, they experienced trauma also. So both sides need healing. So we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it, but again, folks don't seem to want to talk about it. So yeah. So, and I'm sure for these folks, I mean, if you read the first part of the text, the poor in spirit, where Matthew says, these are folks that are being crushed.
Right.
They
exactly.
I used to think the poor in spirit, those folks who are, who weren't involved in the communities of faith and going to church, what have you. But no, these are folks that are being crushed literally by their situation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm trying to find this. I'm trying to find this video so I can drop the link in, the one I was just talking about, so that this is a good one too. I'll just see if I can drop this in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Just so people, if in case there's anyone, just in case there's anyone that ever watches it, they can know.
Put it in the link. Okay, there. Okay.
Yeah, just put it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah.
That's who you were.
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about.
Okay.
It's this is a group out of Baltimore called Leaders of the Beautiful Struggle.
Okay.
So this video's the title is African Centered Research, Violence Prevention, and the Nonprofit Industrial Complex.
Okay.
So I think in that one he gets into it, and it probably would link to. There's another video that they've done that it was like a 2-part thing that they did, but anyway, I thought it was fascinating. I thought, and one of the things that he does in that is looks at the research and actually shows how the statistics for like suicide and the statistics for violence, so-called black on black crime, how they mirror each other. They're the same. The same. So anyway.
Yeah.
Giving some kind of credence to what he's trying to suggest.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, but it goes to, these first 4 groupings, just, that, like you're saying, the economically crushed,
and then the other groupings are those who are called, I think, to be partners with God and with Jesus in creating this environment in which we don't have these 4 groups anymore, or alleviating their suffering. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They are fashioning or participating in the response to the suffering and pain of the first 4.
First 4.
Because the whole point of the blessing of the first 4 is that because the kingdom has drawn near, there will be a response.
Right.
It'll start now and it'll continue on.
Right.
They will be comforted. They will inherit the earth.
Yeah.
Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. They will be filled.
Yeah.
And it's the next group of 4 that help to to make that happen with with God's help, so to
With
speak.
God's help, right? With God's help and
Yeah.
strength, right? Right.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's just hard because I think I think my notes from last week in preparation for preaching, is that, I mean, this context is hard to set, for people, because in a way it only addresses them kind of tangentially or to the degree that they're willing to really participate in this project that
And
most
it
people don't
requires,
consider,
right, and it requires that the second group has to see the plight of the first group.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
we have to be maybe not in their shoes, but at least in their vicinity to
Right.
see their struggle. And
Exactly.
I think one of the challenges is for many of us is that again, living in the first world, we just don't really we don't really see the struggle of a lot of folks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the and the solutions that are on offer, just don't include these kind of remedies, I
Yeah.
mean, build more prisons,
Yeah.
I mean, like all the solutions that just lead to more and more suffering,
Yeah.
are the ones that we're told are the ones that will work,
Yeah.
and that's, that makes it hard to be a part of the second group and to,
Yeah.
like you're saying, to see the what's going on with the first group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Here, yeah. Maybe this I think this is a quote from Carter, talking about the peace, right?
Right. The peace part.
He said,
Okay.
"It is God's cosmic peace in which all things are in just relationship with each other and their creator.
Mhm.
Imposed to imperial peace through violent pacification.
Right.
Peace is the well-being that arrives from God." Yeah.
Yeah. Unlike what you say the military, walk softly and carry a big stick.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the Roman version of peace.
Well, I mean, I remember in Hanover County, there was the Tea Party has signs up all
Oh, yeah.
over Hanover
All
County. And
over.
one of their signs
over.
was, he who wants peace must prepare for war.
Yeah.
Which I think is a George Washington quote.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny how like you said in your question, I mean, we talk about the military budget,
Yeah.
that goes without comment in most
It
churches,
does.
I mean,
It's not question. I mean, I think I saw an article that the Defense Department has yet to pass an audit.
right, exactly.
Yeah. So it's like there's. I mean, I tell people all the time, I don't have no issue with providing for the needs of soldiers, those veterans. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Right.
I do have a problem with spending $700 million on one stealth bomber, but we're getting 10 of them. So it's 70 billion. I do have a problem with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I do have a problem with the fact that, when we look at these defense issues, that oftentimes there's no audit in terms of what the Defense Department is being charged. They're charging $50 for a pen that costs $1.25.
Right. Right.
And then there's no part in that. Yeah.
And well, I mean, I was listening to something today, even talking about how, because we're sending all this money to Ukraine, it's even impacting, like, our military's ability to deploy in different places and to be involved, which I imagine some of the places they're being deployed will be happy that it's impacting it. But like that, that we are, but and then also too, if you listen to veterans, and if you look into the situation of actual soldiers and active duty soldiers, they're not getting this money,
Right.
like
Right.
some active duty soldiers' families are on food stamps. I mean,
yeah, and you see those agencies out there like the Wounded Warrior Project. I mean,
right.
I don't understand why there needs to be a Wounded Warrior Project.
Right.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, yeah. If a
if we have
soldier, lost his leg or lost his arm or lost his eye, I'm sorry, that's a given. We taking care of him the rest of their life.
Right.
There should not be a need for such agencies and organizations, because we should be taking care of them.
Right.
I don't even get that.
Yeah. No. And you sent out the you sent out that article from Sojourners, right?
Yeah.
I was trying to pull it up so people could see it, but I can't quite get it here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so you sent out this builds U.S. empire, not God's kingdom,
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and the unfortunate thing is that a lot of this money goes to the contractors,
right,
who are just a part of the 1%,
right,
who are already having too much influence over our life,
right.
over our life.
Who are just well, a lot of them are just also bilking the taxpayers. I mean, they're just
right,
they're just
right,
talk about pork. I mean,
right.
it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, and then we don't really talk about the fact that, I mean, we've been spending this much money forever,
right,
and we have been losing every conflict that we've been involved in
right.
since the Vietnam War. I mean, and so what exactly is happening here?
Yeah,
I mean, the only thing that's happening is that there's a bunch of people getting rich.
Yeah.
And
Lockheed.
and we're keeping a certain group of people, somewhat on minimum wage, while they're in the military, at least, so it doesn't make our unemployment numbers look so bad. So, but I mean, it's a racket, and like you say, they haven't passed an audit, and they haven't even been audited.
No, never.
So I mean,
yeah.
Well, and this is the, I mean, again, I go back to this, the NATO secretary, weapons are the path to peace.
Right.
I mean, we end up sending all these weapons to these different places, and we don't even know where they end up.
Right.
We pretend like we do, and pretend like they make an impact, but most of the time they end up in the hands of some group that's going to use them later on to create mourners and people hungering and thirsting for righteousness. It's going to create more and more of the first few people of the
and that begs our what is our response in the church? I mean, in terms of this issue, I mean, it seems like the most common response has been that we've sided, that we've got more of a right, not a right response, but a conservative response. That we got to have these weapons, we got to have these systems, we got to have the strong military. So because we are, the United States is the guardian of peace.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
and we're not being prophetic in criticizing our position on some of these things.
Well, and I think that most large denominations, maybe except for the most conservative ones, have these detailed statements about peacemaking,
Mhm.
and about kind of the dangers of all of this stuff. I
Right.
mean, and of course, I mean, again, we're still in the wake of Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday, and this was his, this was one of the three main evils,
Yeah.
that as long as we kept doing this, we were not going to be taking care of people.
Right.
As long as we were giving all of our money to the military, we weren't going to be taking care of people.
Right.
So since then, the churches have known, they've got statements. They have somewhere, there's a whole 2 pages, 3 pages of policy, or
Yeah.
standpoint, theological rationale for why they should be peacemakers.
Yeah.
But in the end, it just sits there. It
Yeah.
doesn't really actually impact how we act or who,
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it's a bind too, because like, this is the way that it's worked out is that a lot of these military the contractors, that's people's jobs.
Right.
You have
Yes, there was always that. There's always that, again, the economic impact. You talk
right,
about some of these major companies, Boeing, Lockheed Martin. I mean, you're
right,
talking about
Northrop Grumman or
Northrop
whatever.
Grumman. You're talking about
Yeah,
huge companies,
right,
multilateral, uh, well capitalized companies
right,
that pour billions and billions of dollars into and some local economies. So
right.
there's some local economies that depend on military bases. And
Well,
what have you.
and
Yeah.
and you go around to each elected official,
Yeah.
that steadily votes for these things, and
Yeah.
you'll find out that they got, a manufacturing plant, in one of their main
Yeah.
constituencies,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, so it's not hard to follow the money,
Yeah.
when,
Yeah.
when it comes to these things,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's like, well, but I mean, again, from our point of view as the church, can we not insist that people build something different
Right.
than a destruction machine?
And
You
also,
know,
it also
you know.
means that sometimes we'll have to make some difficult choices, that
Mhm.
some uncomfortable choices, um, that maybe sometimes we're afraid or afraid or we're
Right.
afraid to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it means that it might mean that instead of having that plant there, that you have to look at a long-term economic solution that's that you have something there that's not military related, but
Right.
yeah,
Right.
but that what is
I mean, there's
long term.
yeah. I mean, you can't feed anybody. You can't, create whatever, electricity or heat or
Yeah,
warmth with a bomber. You
right.
can only bomb people.
Bomb. Yeah,
That's
right,
that's all you can do,
right,
I
right.
mean, so, like, I mean, it's, it, it's not serving a humane purpose. It's not a part of the things that we're called to be a part of,
Yeah, yeah. But I
even
think
if
for
it
those
means that
people, I
you
think
can.
they think that, well, I'm not the one. They're getting bombed over there. Just
Right,
like with the violence.
right,
When the phrase I always say here, this doesn't happen in our neighborhood. The
right,
same
right,
thing is they're getting bombed over there. It's not. It's not in front of my. It's not in my face. As long as it's not in my
right.
face, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can gate my community.
Yeah, I
You
can
don't need.
get
I
my
don't need
community.
to. I
Well,
don't need to
we
worry about.
good. We good.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We good.
No, I mean, I think. Yeah. I mean, it's. And I mean, the hopeful thing for me, the encouraging thing to me, is that I do feel like that. I mean, the things that are talked about in the Beatitudes, the people who are called blessed, and the people who, and the strategies, or the things laid out as addressing what's wrong in the world, makes sense.
It
I
does.
mean, it rings true. I mean, it I mean, obviously there's a clear understanding that there's a lot of people who don't like it,
Yeah.
because there's a talk of persecution and a talk of being reviled,
Right.
but in the end, I mean, it's clear that building weapons, giving our money to make weapons, I mean, is not going to bring, weapons are not the path to peace. I mean, that's just all there is to it, I mean,
Right.
no matter what people say.
Right. And I mean, in terms of the violence, I mean, trying to getting back to this whole gun violence thing. One of the things I always say that guns are so deeply ingrained in American culture and American psyche, and I think that we talk about the need to sometimes sit and to detoxify. We want to detox ourselves. One of the things that we need to detox is why is it that guns are so deeply ingrained in our culture and psyche? Why is that?
Well, we don't. I don't know if we want to go there. Part of it is that there was a whole lot of indigenous people around that were getting in the way.
Yeah.
And there was a whole lot of black people around that kept trying to run away.
Yeah.
So we needed to make sure that we had
well stocked.
Had to be well stocked because people needed to get in line.
Yeah.
Or get exterminated.
Yeah.
One or the other. I mean, and that unfortunately, I mean, that's part of the reality of the Second Amendment. What what's going on there? So we don't have a standing army, but we have a lot of people that we need to kill,
right?
Or keep in line.
Yeah, because these people are a threat to my manifest destiny.
Right. Yeah,
these people are a threat to my manifest destiny. Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Anyway, I want that's yeah, you're right. I mean, people just, people from other places just don't understand it.
Yeah.
I think they can't imagine.
And I think what the spirit of this text is not about manifest destiny, because it's not about grabbing. It's all of us are part of a community in which we all share and we all benefit and we all grow together.
Right.
That's the complete opposite of manifest destiny, which is again something that's deeply ingrained in American culture and American psyche.
Right.
That we have the right to this land. We have the right to grab this land, not any other land we can get our hands on.
Well, and that's why I think that's why I really appreciate what the real material reading of the text that Carter gives about they shall inherit the earth.
Yeah.
I mean that is that's about land. That's about
it is.
That's about the sharing of the land. I think about this is the kind of call of many in the indigenous community now. Land back. Give. If we're gonna save the planet, if we're gonna make things right, you need to give the land back to us.
Yeah.
Because we actually knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
And we actually know how to take care of this place.
And that phrase the land, and we think about the social economic context of this text, that there were so few land owners.
Right.
So that most of the folks in the crowd that in the beginning of Matthew, these are folks that didn't have nothing. They didn't have a land. They didn't have anything that was their own. They were truly landless. So I mean, that speaks volumes to those who control all the assets and all the land.
Right. Well, and if they came from the Hebrew tradition, they knew that they were supposed to have land.
Right.
But if the land was taken from them, there was supposed to be a time when it was redeemed, and given back to them. And that the redistribution would reestablish the sharing of the land. So they knew that this was not only just what this crazy guy was saying, but that it was in line with the intentions that God had put,
right,
you know, into the land,
right.
from the beginning, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Um, yeah. I think of the mayor in Jackson, Mississippi. You know, the community that there was a community that went down to Mississippi from up north, to try to purchase land down there. You know, it was, I can't remember the name of the, you know, the name of the, you know, the name of the group, but you know, they were like, you know, black nationalists, basically, like, you know, they had, you know, so they went down, and their you know, the call was always free the land, you know, free, you know, free the land. So you know, it was always shocking to, you know, to see a mayor of a southern, you know, southern city in Mississippi, you know, stand up at the podium and the first thing he says is free the land.
Free the land. And not
You
just
know,
land there, but also all resources. I mean, we see
right.
what's happened with water. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
crazy that, you know, Kevin McCarthy is fighting for power and his constituents literally have no water.
Right.
Their wells are running dry. I mean, that's all one story. Folks are dependent on bottled water, and of course, you know, we know how expensive that is to have water brought into you in that way. So, I mean, you have folks in Arizona and parts of California that are literally at each other's throats over water resources now because of climate change.
Yeah.
And Kevin McCarthy doesn't even acknowledge the scientific fact of climate change.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we can talk about the violence of those who finance the denial of climate change for the sake of what really amounts to them a, you know, digital grouping of numbers that they'll never have even the lifetime to spend. You know, I mean, it's really just a calculation of some, you know, it's some prize money, you know, that they already have enough to, you know, like they're never going to be able to use all that they have, but just they're doing that. They're destroying, they're committing, you know, just destruction and violence on people just so they can watch their numbers tick up on a screen that doesn't even have any real material, you know, basis for them, because they already have all the houses and resources that they need.
And that's the problem as we deal with climate change. I mean, in terms of now folks are actually going to be are at the point of they're at each other's throat for resources, for water, for land, because they're battling, you know, sea level rise. So they're battling the sea taking some of their property, and because folks are in denial of climate change, they don't believe that some folks in the first world don't even believe that that sea level rise is a reality, you know. So and refuse to embrace policies that will combat some of this stuff. But
it's real. It's interesting here because I've had a couple conversations with people, you know, that think about this, thinking about, you know, being on the banks of the Great Lakes, and what that will mean, you know, going forward, to be, you know, so close to so much fresh water, you know, as people in the rest of the nation, and as people in the rest of the world, you know.
And now decisions are being made in many communities along coastline and other areas on this whole mitigation. And one issue I always raise is this issue of mitigation: who gets mitigated and who doesn't, and at what cost. You know, so if say in Hampton Roads, we're just making some major decisions about how to deal with sea level rise. If one community does decide to build a seawall, well, that water's got to go somewhere. So
right.
So my issue always is, if when we look at mitigation, are all communities having a voice at the table on these issues of mitigation?
No, exactly. Well, I think about, you know, I mean, I remember whenever, you know, we were trying to stop the pipeline going through, going through Virginia and West Virginia, the people in Hampton Roads, the committees and stuff there were in support of it happening because they wanted, they wanted the fuel, and the military wanted the fuel.
Right.
And, and it's like, in the the environmentalists are like, look, if you keep pushing for this, like, there's not going to be a place for you to even, there's not going to be a need for fuel, because there's not going to be a place for the fuel to go. Like, you're going to be gone. So I don't know. It's a crazy, crazy world. Crazy world.
It's a lot of things to consider. And I think the text is calling us to consider these things, and to think differently about resources and whatever, but which requires a metanoia, a change of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think, and I mean, it's really, I've been really fascinated in this first, 5 chapters or so about this idea of righteousness, and its connection with justice, and that connection with righteousness and justice being all tied in with this kind of faithfulness to what God is calling us, into and to be, and then, you have this idea of peace, that results from this justice and righteousness, that is, a people in tune, with what God is trying to do in the world, and I mean, it's interesting because, I grew up with a very different understanding of righteousness.
I think still have this concept of righteousness being this individual concept of, it means that I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't chase women, but we don't see it in the other aspect of this in terms of what it means for community, what it means that way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and like you're saying, I mean, that one understanding really just leads to your own personal piety.
Right.
And doesn't force you to think about other people unless they are violating what you think is your personal piety, or they're a stunning exemplar that you want to follow. I mean, it's either people are either in one or the other category, and that's how you think about others. When the point of the text is to think about others in a radically different way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think the what was the phrase, that the way that it was always told to me was, I don't drink, smoke, or chew, or date girls that do.
That's wow.
So, right. Now in Kentucky, you might not think that, you'd have to, I mean,
well, you leave the drink part stays in.
you might not think, most people don't think you have to worry about, the girls that chew, but down in Kentucky, you never know. That's tobacco country.
Everybody's tobacco company. And bourbon too.
Right. Yeah. Well, good. Thanks, Mark. I mean, it's good talking to you.
Good stuff.
Good conversation. So we just move a few more verses down. I can't remember exactly how many it is. 13 through, I think it might be pretty short. I think it's just the salt of the earth, light of the world, salt of the earth. Little
13
section
through 17, up to 17, 13 through 16.
I think it probably goes 13 through 20.
13 through 20. Okay.
Because it probably gets the law and the prophets in there too.
Okay.
But I think it's 13 through 20 is next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this a text you're preaching on this week?
Beatitudes? Yeah. Okay. Well, theoretically, I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. We'll see. Okay. Yeah, I get more and more trepidation every day.
Hopefully, you got some food for thought. I mean, because it is very, very rich. I think that I think if we can just get folks to conceptualize this a little bit differently,
right?
I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing for me is it's just so it's so relevant. It's so needed.
Yeah.
It's so
Needed. Yeah.
necessary. It's so, I mean, like it is a valid. It's a valid way of thinking and living in the world that would be, helpful and good.
Good.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like if this was inspiring, I mean, like, I mean, that's the thing for me is that, like I have tried a number of times to let go of my faith, and move on and move on in the world. But to me, it continues to be compelling.
Right.
I mean, it
Right.
continues to be, like a real source of how we might make the world a better place.
It's a beautiful, beautiful vision of what
Yeah.
of what God is calling us to be. It's just,
Right.
but it does mean that we have to need to metanoia and rethink.
Right.
I think rethink a lot of things,
Yeah,
which is difficult. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll have Marcy back next time. I think she's in the middle of her
exams.
her exam.
Yeah.
And I don't know if is Leonard teaching another class?
He teaches Bible study on Wednesday, so I think that's his.
So when we go back to Mondays, we'll be good.
Yeah, I think Mondays.
Speaking of that, I think the book thing that I'm doing has 2 more weeks.
Okay.
So
maybe in February, sometime
probably mid-February, we'll go back to Mondays.
Okay.
And not this coming week, but the next week, we may have to see if we can like do a recording on a Tuesday or something like that, and then play it on Wednesday. Because I have I got a church thing on Wednesday.
Well,
coming up in a couple weeks.
Remind me. I could do Tuesdays. Just have to remind me.
Yeah, I just have to figure it out.
Okay.
But then hopefully after after mid-February we can
go back.
We can get back on Mondays and we'll be all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Cool.
Okie doke. All right.
Peace, Darren. We talked to you.
Yeah.